Hi, and Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Ali Zendrian, Editor-in-Chief of Brand News, and this is the Financial Services News You Might Have Missed podcast. This is where I uncover news gems that might not have gotten their total chance to sparkle, and I dust them off a little bit. As you may be able to hear, I have a cold, so apologies in advance if this is a fever dream that you're all going on with me, but thank you for your patience. On the other side of things, though, my co-host and personal financial advisor, Brandon Galli of Galli Financial, will take the reins, I'm sure. So thank you for being part of all this.
Yeah, well, Happy New Year to you as well, Ali, and all those that are listening out there. And I was sick towards the end of last year, and you carried me through that one. So if I have to return the favor, happy to do it. So appreciate you being here, and I know those that are listening to the podcast too. Appreciate you toughing out this one for the first of the year.
Well, I missed doing it too much. It was bad timing being sick. Anyway, so our first piece of news this week is apparently the first and only state-issued stable token in the United States, which is called the Frontier Stable Token. It was done in partnership with the state of Wyoming and Franklin Templeton, and the press release said that it's bringing together the security and oversight of a state-managed reserve with the efficiency and transparency of blockchain technology. Later in the press release, it was talking about how Wyoming has been on the cutting edge of financial innovation. And before I got too sick and just would have given up, I went through Perplexity and asked how that was the case, because I didn't know that was. It said apparently that Wyoming has a new type of fully reserved bank charter called a special purpose depository institution, specifically designed for digital asset businesses. And also, since 2016, Wyoming has passed dozens of sector-specific blockchain laws to try to put itself as a leader with digital assets. So way to go, Wyoming. I taught myself a lot of things today. And also thank you, Perplexity. What did you make of all this, Brandon?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And I know we've talked about crypto a lot on this podcast because it keeps coming up, obviously, in the news. So it continues to grow and expand. And so I'm not terribly surprised that now a state is getting more seriously into it. And I also wouldn't be surprised if others do as well. So I didn't do as much research into Perplexity, although that is my favorite AI tool on this one, but it did somewhat make sense because I know that sometimes it's bad tax advice on Instagram, to be fair, but a lot of people talk about Wyoming LLCs. I'm not sure all of the particular reasons, and there's also a lot of misinformation out there, but they do seem to be pretty pro-business in that particular state. So also then not surprised that they are a bit more innovative in the overall financial aspect.
That's good to know. And I'm glad that you knew the answer to that. I didn't want to leave you hanging. So what I think is interesting, and we've also kind of debated before on the podcast, is so having this, we're combining something that's a digital asset. The whole point of it was like blockchain, and we're being totally anti the system with the system. And on the one hand, that's super cool, and it's making it more available. And obviously states are doing so many things to make this possible. But on the other hand, it's sort of like, okay, but so did we lose the purpose of the blockchain anyway? I don't know if it's worth resurrecting that.
No, I think that's a great insight. Again, when you first brought it up on the show, I hadn't considered that, right? Because it really was, when we'll just use crypto as a broad level term, it's not attached to the system. And that was one of the major selling points, which is what you're bringing up. And then now it's kind of merging with that same system, to your point. So I feel like maybe it's going to be, maybe there's a combination, maybe there's some crypto, quote unquote, in the system, but then there's still the crypto that's out of the system. I don't even exactly know what those terms mean for those listening. I'm doing some quotations on those, but yeah, because I think that's a really interesting point. I don't have an answer to it, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see some crypto experts how they respond to that question.
I would take it for the everyday person that this is bringing something that might be, whether it's foreign still, probably not, but at least seems like unaccessible or whatnot. It's bringing it into your reign of thinking.
Yeah, and it does seem to add legitimacy to it as well. I mean, even think about how much more legitimate crypto even just feels today, where in 2026 as we're recording this, versus say even 6 years ago, 8 years ago. Big difference in what people know and don't know. Still a lot of unknowns, to be fair with that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the governmental bodies, where probably some level of regulation is a good thing, but we don't then want to swing the pendulum too far where it's over-regulated and now lose a lot of other benefits. So I'm glad I'm not the one that has to make those decisions, because trying to find that balance, how do we minimize fraud, but also legitimize this and give more free reign. I think that's going to be the challenge. And like I said, glad I'm not the one that has to solve that one.
Yes. You have other problems to solve, but all
Yeah.
good. So our second piece of news this week is from Newrez, which partnered with Home Vision to develop an industry-first AI-powered mortgage underwriting solution. So I appreciate these two groups working together to take a process that it seems like is time-consuming and inefficient, and at least using AI to make it better. I was curious when I saw this with the underwriting process. Is this really going to mean that then the housing market moves that much faster? Is this just like, look, we're putting shiny AI on top of something and it just makes it look pretty? What were your thoughts on this?
Well, my crystal ball's not perfectly working, so I don't have a perfect answer for you there. But what I think is if it's at least helping with the tediousness of the task that, say, a mortgage broker might be going through, my thought would be it's actually going to enhance the human. Because the human is still going to be incredibly valuable to help you figure out what truly can you afford. Just because a tool, which they've had tools on the internet that you could just enter in numbers and get it calculated, or even if AI is calculating, oh, this is how much house you can afford, Allie, that might be the maximum where they're letting you get to like a 45% debt to income ratio where maybe technically you can get it, but almost no financial professional is going to say that that is advisable unless there's some special facts and circumstances involved. So I still think a human is going to be there to be able to realize, okay, what type of, what's your history been with mortgages? Do you like the 15s? Do you like the 30? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you going to be in the home for a long time? More short term? So we'll call it that consulting level. But on the mortgage lending side, I think hopefully the way that I would see it, that's going to allow the top mortgage lenders who do that consultative effort to continue to grow, because the more menial tasks like the paperwork and documents are more streamlined. So that's at least kind of what one of my first thoughts was.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. So as somebody, I have a house, I've refied, I was able to benefit from the rates going down, thankfully. But so in that process, you realize how much of this document is like in the wrong format, or like we didn't see it, or like how much just goofiness there is. So I do hope that the process overall gets better, because maybe then people who do have, if you're, for instance, trying to refi, you've got a short window. The rate could change on you, and then all of a sudden you have to do the paperwork all over again, or the whole situation is bust and it doesn't work for you anymore. So
Yeah, again, hopefully it streamlines that process, because that just took extra time. And this paperwork is slightly out of order. Probably didn't really change overall. Like, you already knew, yes, I want to refi. You understand all the benefits, understand all the costs, everything's transparent. Well, hopefully so. And then you just want to execute. Like, yes, I want that thing. Help me do that thing. And right now, it doesn't sound like it's terribly simple. So that's really where I see it as well. I agree with you. That's where AI is going to come in and make it easier, I think, from you as the client, but then also hopefully on the back end for the mortgage broker too. But if they can improve that experience, I think they're going to do more business and consumers are going to be more happy.
So our next piece of news caught my eye because of the headline. It's a new MetLife data finds rising cost pressures outpacing gains in workforce well-being. So Brandon, we were talking about people's views of the economy and their own personal finances, but also that impacting their performance at work. So what caught my eye in particular with this announcement was that it said that in this case, 60% of employers have increased their investment in benefits and 62% have expanded their non-medical offerings. So it does seem like, at least on some level, there's some workplace acknowledgement of, if we don't try to make things better and try to give more people benefits, we can't fix the economy. Obviously, we can't give everybody like $1 million raise and just make life magically all better, but we got to do something. So would love to get your thoughts. I know that this is something that we've hopefully not talked to death, but talked a decent amount about.
Right. I mean, not to be the broken record, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that our healthcare system could probably operate a bit more efficiently or smoothly. And but we see it in lots of different areas, from the individual perspective, or even this article sharing the case from the business side too. And in particular, I don't know if the article specifically mentioned this, but smaller businesses, because if you're trying to get a health plan for your 5 to 10 employees, all things held equal, that's going to be more cost on a per employee basis compared to a company who has 100 or 300 or 500, because you can start to pool risk together and lower the costs on a per person or per household basis, is how the economics of that would work. But employees know how expensive healthcare is. And I couldn't imagine right now trying to figure out a healthcare system if I had several employees right now, because costs are rising there. So now you might be left with, as a business owner, you have limited funds, unfortunately, and you might have to make a decision. Do I give this person we'll call it a cash compensation increase, like to their salary, or do we basically take that, say $5,000 or $10,000, whatever that number was going to be, and repurpose more of that into what are going to be good benefits? And the employee might see that they have good benefits, but it's still different than seeing an extra $10,000, on your W-2 at the end of the year. So trying to balance that, I think is going to be a challenge. And again, even more so for the smaller employers whose costs might be a bit higher.
Yeah. Although it does make you wonder, and maybe it's too hard to gauge. So like if said employer were to go to, their employees and say, look, like, I can give you, there's money in the budget. I can either give all of you guys, a $10,000 raise, or, for $10,000, you can have whatever, a massage once a month for the whole year. Like, you tell me which one you want. Maybe it's hard for somebody to quantify something like that, or maybe somebody easily says, I love $10,000. I don't know how people figure these out.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I love that question, Allie, because it was similar to, I think we had an article in the last couple of months that was, how much of a pay cut would you take to work more remotely, I think is what it was. So I feel like along the same lines, your question of, hey, would you rather have X amount of dollars as cash compensation as a bonus maybe, or these better benefits? And just see, because I feel like it could be split. We could see one take over another. It could be very different on a company to company basis. I'm sure the health, or how healthy someone is or is not, that's also going to impact their personal decision. But I think that would be cool to see that data on, with a large enough sample size. Do people prefer, we'll just assume, same dollar amount in better benefits, or are they willing to maybe pay a little bit more out of pocket, so to speak, for healthcare, but also getting compensated in cash on a higher level? So again, that's a great question.
Thank you. I'm glad that some of this at least makes sense. But granted, this year's tax structure may be different, but I was talking to somebody recently and saying it almost like isn't worth it to me to work a little bit harder, because I get half of my bonus eaten up to taxes. So then do you say to yourself, like, well, that $10,000 would be lovely. Like the $5,000 is like, versus but 10 massages. Right.
I mean, someone could absolutely start building a spreadsheet. They could factor in the taxation versus just the additional money that's going to go, or that they're going to potentially even save on a monthly basis on their premiums. Their premiums could go, from a personal perspective, a little bit lower because their employer is repurposing more of that dollars into covering the other portion of insurance. Yeah, I feel like you could math this out in so many different ways once you had at least a few of those variables. So it would be interesting to even see this on a mathematical basis, which it does one seem to benefit the other. But again, there's going to be a lot of variables and factors, but I'm a geek, so I think that'd be cool to see.
Well, if anybody wants to participate, we are happy to geek out with all of you. So our last bit of news this week is announcing the new president for the year 2026 for the Financial Planning Association. This is an AtoZ communications client. The new 2026 FPA president is Daniel Galli. He's a former educator who then turned to financial planning. I haven't personally met him yet, although Dan, if you're watching, hi. If you'd like to chat, I would love to as well. What I thought was interesting here in particular, on top of just being excited for the FPA and for the direction that 2026 will take for them, I think Dan having this perspective of financial planning being his second career, as somebody who feels like financial planners are all like, you went to school, I graduated college, this is what I do for my whole career, and that's it. That's not entirely the case all the time. It's not just the kids who said, I'm good at math, and so this is the career for math, correct? You can see people who make that transition or realize that it's more of a helping career and then switch to it. But obviously, as somebody who is in this career, I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. I don't personally know him either and know a ton about his story, but I'm not surprised that the education field going into planning, I know some other folks that have a similar-ish path, at least from that perspective. And I think it does make sense, because if you're an educator, you're probably a good teacher. We would hope that you're a good teacher at this point. And really, that's what a lot of real financial planning is. Yes, there's going to be some math involved, but I think more people don't realize, I mean, the math that we're doing typically is the basic stuff: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, percentages, really complex calculations, even say something like a time value of money, you're likely using a calculator, or you're definitely at least using a calculator or other tools. So you don't have to know calculus and all these crazy formulas. If you know all these formulas, but then you can't communicate with clients, you can't teach the client, you're going to have a harder time communicating with them versus someone who comes, maybe they didn't have all of the finance background, but they know how to connect with people. They know how to break down complex topics in a simple and easy to understand way. It really isn't terribly surprising that even that career specifically transitioning over to financial planning would have a lot of success. And I feel like there's a lot of good examples, and this is another one that clearly you can have success.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. I would hope that the profession would get many more people like this who, like you said, so it's interesting thinking about the field that you need to be a good communicator, and that, like you said, so you could tell me, obviously we work together, you could tell me till I'm blue in the face, you should do XYZ. But if it's not said in a way that is impactful to me, or that I understand, or meets a few different factors, that's going to be that. But if you're giving it to me in a way that's, Allie, if you do XYZ, your kids are going to be so much better off, and blah, blah, blah. I'm on whatever you tell me to do, like we're doing it. So it would be great to see the profession really engaging with that a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think even just sharing that out, sharing more stories like this where people could think, oh, well, I'm not good at math. But oh, wait, you don't have to be a rock star at math necessarily. Again, we're talking the basics of math. And most of the time, again, we have calculators and technology that do a lot of it. I think it still is good to understand the math side of it. Don't get me wrong. But I think it could open people's eyes a bit where, oh, that person was just a stellar student at math. No, there's plenty of people that, even for me, this might be surprising. Math wasn't my favorite subject in school either. I feel like I had one teacher in particular that was just an incredible teacher, one of my favorites, and he happened to be in math, but I don't think I took above pre-calculus even through college because I didn't need it. But I would take the investment specific courses that had all these different formulas and ratios. So I took, we'll call it finance specific math throughout, and not knowing calculus or not remembering all of the things about geometry haven't come in handy in the financial planning space.
So I apologize. I'm sure that you saw my face, but so I started laughing. So I never took pre-calc or calc either. I should have in high school actually, but it never came to be. And then got to college and was like, I pass. This is never going to be a part of my life.
I said I didn't really like math growing up, but then when I got into finance, I called it math with a purpose. I'm not just solving for X, whatever X might be, but X means, oh, you're saving this much on taxes. Oh, X means this is how much money your kids are going to have in 15 years to help cover their college. It's X and it means something. So I feel like that to me was what changed it. I needed a purpose. Like, I don't just want to do this for math for fun. Let it mean something is basically what my take was. And that's when I started when I got into finance, fell in love with math, if you will. Again, the basics of math, but again, math with a purpose is what I call it.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, and I love that, by the way. And so from my perspective, solving for X is like solving for me. But so it seems like it's also just like problem solving, like, which I guess arguably is math, but I have problems like we all just have. It's okay, well, XYZ needs to happen. Okay, so A, B, and C need to line up in this way. And then, so yeah, it's great to see those kind of skills used.
Yeah. And then back to the education piece again, so important in my opinion. Each client's different. I always say, how much do you want to understand on this particular topic? Because, for example, even Allie, for you, if you keep asking me questions, I'm going to continue to answer until you're basically an expert yourself. Or if you're like, all right, that's going above my head, I know enough, I understand this enough to feel confident with it, please stop talking, I'm good. Then I'd stop there, because like we talked about before, if you can't communicate why something's in your best interest, this is what it's going to help accomplish, show that math, but also with the purpose. You could be the greatest calculus student of all time, but that alone is not going to make you a good financial planner. In fact, you might be a pretty poor one if you can't then communicate, versus someone who just knows basic math, but they can communicate effectively and implement the right strategies for you, probably going to have more success.
Exactly. So best of luck to everybody in the financial planning profession. I'm super excited for the direction that the FPA is going to be taking this year. And Dan, best of luck in your position. And Brandon, thank you as always for being a stellar financial planner and doing these things with a purpose, because your purpose helps me and my family. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words. Love working with you too.
All right. Well, on to next week, and fingers crossed I'm not sick as a dog.
Yes, hopefully, yeah, get some rest, as much rest as you possibly can. I know you have some kiddos, so get some rest, and hopefully you're 100% or at least very close to next week. And looking forward to it.
Thank you.
See you, Allie.